President Trump has leaned into this war and related diplomacy for the last several days. And yet Congress is now keeping Jeffrey Epstein and that scandal in the headlines, even though, of course, it hurts their fellow Republican president. But a key figure who was in charge of the Bureau of Prisons and the Justice Department during Epstein's controversial death and the ensuing scandal over missing videos and all the rest, actually went under oath today, former Attorney General Barr, facing questions from a Republican-led committee. Now, he was subpoenaed along with some other witnesses. What's striking is that even though he has obvious vulnerabilities, indeed, at times he's admitted that mistakes were obviously made at that prison, he has rushed to the front of the list of people testifying. Now, he was the Attorney General, quote, during a time when Epstein was under investigation, the committee notes, and they had said they thought he might have knowledge or information relevant to the probe. And yet here's where things skip a beat, because Republicans want to appear to be investigating this. And yet, in some key ways, they also are now being pulled into a lot of happy talk about how maybe everything's just fine. Because the Republican chair, James Comer, says Barr basically defended Donald Trump and told them things that are consistent with the story they've been telling in public. But you got to go back all the way to 2019 when Barr was in charge, and he said he would look into whatever happened in that now suspicious prison cell death. Now, he admitted, as I mentioned, a perfect storm of screw-ups, and then said he would personally review security footage. And having done that, he said on his authority, his credibility, nobody entered Epstein's cell the night he died. Problem is, Barr said that years ago, and then finally later, selective video was released, but not the most important video, which Barr's DOJ still claims was lost. The video that finally came out in the second term has faced a lot of questions about not only missing material, but inconsistencies that would suggest, CBS among others, that Barr was overstating his conclusions, which is they didn't have enough evidence to rule out whether anyone might have gotten into that cell. I want to be clear. That doesn't mean somebody did go in. It just means that Barr overstated the case. And that raises more questions like, why is a sitting member of the government in a rush to apparently clear what his own Bureau of Prisons did at the time? Why overstate that? But if you remember Bill Barr, you might remember the Barr letter that misrepresented the actual Mueller report and many other ways that he's tried to have it both ways. Meanwhile, the DOJ says it will start turning over more Epstein documents to the Congress this week. We're joined by former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance. Welcome.
Hey, Ari.
Nice to have you. We don't have a lot of detail yet about what Barr said. Not unlike the famous Barr letter, we're getting little political snippets. But let's start with the fact that the committee subpoenaed many people, including Eric Holder and President Clinton. Does it strike you as odd or raising questions that Barr rushed in there and they seem to have a very sort of aligned message strategy about whatever happened in there?
Well, someone had to go first, I suppose, and Barr is certainly a witness with knowledge about the relevant time period in the case. It's, I think, very difficult to figure out why, for instance, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch were subpoenaed, why Hillary Clinton would have been subpoenaed. That feels more like it's about politics than about law. But I agree with you. You know, having Barr first sets the narrative, and the narrative today, based on what we have heard about his testimony, is that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. So yet again, we have Bill Barr standing by his guy, standing up for Donald Trump. And as you point out, during the Mueller investigation, Barr really whitewashed the conclusions of that report in a highly favorable way for Trump when it wasn't warranted. So I think it's appropriate for us to reserve judgment here until we learn more.
And that Bill Barr's opinion of his former boss is, I think, far less probative, far less essential to a thorough investigation than whether he was part of an effort to minimize the open questions there. And I've been very careful to say we don't know what happened. But the original video that was most dead-on view of the door remains missing. So you've got a guy saying, I reviewed the lesser video and I cleared everyone. But if this were a independent, 9/11 style or Warren Commission style review, you'd really want to double check that, because Barr had every reason to want to say that the DOJ didn't do anything really wrong.
So I think that there are two separate issues here, and one is Donald Trump, whether he appears in the Epstein files, and apparently Barr has said did nothing wrong. But you point out this earlier issue, which I think many people have been unwilling to let go of. The fact that there are missing minutes of video right at the most, I think, significant point in time has led people to have questions about the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the facts involved in, I think, the mathematics, the calculus involved in how he allegedly committed suicide have caused people to have more questions. And so, look, you know, Bill Barr saw all the video, heard from all the witnesses, reached the conclusion that he reached. But perhaps more important than that conclusion would be hearing him explain why he believes it's valid, given the problems with missing evidence that can't be accounted for.
Yeah, and here was Comer now. We'll play that. Take a look.
There have to be a lot of documents. So I'm under the impression that they're gathering all these documents, and that's what the subpoena called for. And I think the administration knows this is what Congress wants, Republicans and Democrats. And I think President Trump has said clearly he wants to, release all the documents. So we're going to get the documents.
Is it odd that Comer is echoing Donald Trump's claim he wants to release documents that he has refused to release? And now they're playing a classic Washington game of saying, well, we'll move them from this building to that building. We'll move them from DOJ to Congress. There are separate real equities questions about how much should be released, as always. But what does it tell you that he's faking it? I don't mean it disrespectfully, but he seems to be faking an investigation where the beginning, middle, and end is repeating Donald Trump is all good.
It feels like some pretty weak sauce, right? The conclusion comes before the evidence is in. And Ari, when I issued a subpoena, I'm not Congress, I was a federal prosecutor, but when I issued a subpoena, I meant for the person receiving it to comply with it in a timely fashion. Here, the Justice Department has had a period of weeks to at least begin compliance. The subpoena's due date is tomorrow. And what we heard from Comer today is, well, maybe the Justice Department will start to turn over documents to us, but it's complicated. Well, that's why you get a little bit of lead time on doing these things, right?